another email from a follower who had a scary mimic story. And the subject of the email was, I heard my sister's voice, but she was miles away. Off to a terrifying start. My follower's name is Stacy, her sister's name is Caroline, and Caroline is the older sister who just went off to grad school. Now she's going to grad school out of state, and it's been really bittersweet because she and Stacy are really, really close, but they keep up through kind of constant FaceTiming throughout the day and texting and stuff. But ever since Caroline moved out of state, Stacy has been experiencing something that sounds just like her, but obviously Caroline is nowhere around. So this takes place about 3 weeks ago when Stacy had just gotten back to her city from visiting their parents for the holidays. But it's Stacy's first Monday back at work, right? And she gets home from her shift and her phone rings and she looks down and it's her sister calling. Now, usually when her sister is going to call her, she'll shoot her a preemptive hey, are you free to FaceTime text? But Stacy picks up, and when she does, the FaceTime screen is just black. Caroline isn't there, something's wrong with the phone, you know what I mean? And Stacy's saying her name, and she's about to hang up when she hears Caroline's voice come through the phone and say the words, "Come here." Stacy immediately, her reaction is that this must be a prank. Caroline thinks she's being funny. So she tries to call back. She tries to text her. She's not getting a response. Stacy's not really taking this seriously. She's not concerned or anything. She ends up going to bed. And she wakes up in the morning to a text from Caroline that said, "Sorry, I missed your call. I fell asleep early last night." And Caroline's haha, very funny. Yes, when I called you back because you called me and whispered, "Come here," all creepy. But Caroline sent her call log and she had never called Stacy. She obviously thought it was weird, but it was 2 days later that things got much weirder. She's just in her kitchen cleaning up for the day. It's 9 p.m. as she's doing this. She's winding down the house for the night. And she hears what sounds like footsteps in the foyer, as if somebody had just walked into the house, but she hadn't heard the front door close. She lives alone, but she puts down her cleaning supplies. She goes and she looks at the front door and she looks at the foyer and nobody's there. And as she is about to turn around and go back to the kitchen and get back to her cleaning, she hears her sister, Caroline, say just the word, "Hi." It was her voice, unmistakably. She hears Caroline say, "Hi." And she's looking around did Caroline come from out of state to surprise me? Is this another prank? But Caroline is nowhere to be seen. She doesn't even live in state. In fact, their time zones are so different that Caroline is long asleep for the night and Stacy can't even call her about this. But the next day, Stacy calls Caroline and Caroline is pretty creeped out by this. And she's the one who kind of explains the concept of a mimic to Stacy. You know, that mimics are a paranormal entity that can mimic you, mimic a loved one, and sound just like them to lure you into a false sense of security. And Stacy thinks this stuff is interesting, but she's certainly not in panic mode, thinking there's a mimic in her house. But Caroline is taking this pretty seriously, and she's listen, this really isn't something to mess with. Don't reply to it, don't engage with it, just ignore it, and it'll go away. Well, that weekend, Stacy goes over to a friend's house, and she gets home pretty late in the evening. And she says that the minute that she stepped into her apartment, everything just felt a little strange. I don't know, the energy of the place was just off, and she's walking through, and she doesn't really know why she feels so on edge, but she's doing a walkthrough of her apartment. And when she gets to her bedroom, her bedding is all rumpled, somebody had been sleeping in her bed. And at this point, Stacy isn't thinking something paranormal is going on. She thinks somebody has been in her house sleeping in her bed. So she calls the police, and as she's just literally huddling in her bedroom, waiting for the cops to get there, she notices that this little tiny ceramic cat that her sister had given her a knickknack one year on her nightstand, it's always just been there. She notices that it has been turned so that it's facing the wall instead of out like it always is. But the cops do come and check it out, and they totally understand why she found it really creepy, but there's no sign of forced entry. It doesn't look like anyone's actually been in her apartment. And she just feels like she is blowing everything so out of proportion at this point. She feels crazy. She feels bad for calling the cops out, and she just wants to go to bed. How she slept in that place after this, I honestly don't know. And as she is falling asleep, from outside of her bedroom window, she can hear her sister's voice saying, "Let me in a really soft voice, "Let me in, let me in." right outside of the window. And she thought this was interesting the next day because that was the direction that the little ceramic cat had been turned to face. And she was so terrified by this experience. I feel so bad for her. She ended up just like crying her eyes out and sleeping on the couch that night, like as far away from her bedroom as she could be. And she didn't really know what to do or what to think. Like, was the apartment haunted? Did she have this attachment because it sounded like her sister? She obviously talked to Caroline about it. I mean, this is so beyond like maybe her sister was playing a prank or something one night. You know what I mean? Like, this has gotten really, really, really scary for Stacy. Stacy said in the email, I realized later that the first call might have been sort of an invitation. It said, come here, like it wanted me to go somewhere with it. When I didn't do what it said, it tried to come inside itself, outside my window, saying, let me in, let me in. I know this sounds insane. It is insane, but it's what I experienced. Stacy hasn't always been like a staunch believer in the paranormal, but this has truly gotten her, and she just thinks the best thing to do is to move out of her place. So she's spending a lot of time packing up her apartment. I'm also sorry for the insane noises you've been hearing throughout this story. I have a stage 5 clinger in my lap. And as she's moving out, she just feels like the activity is getting somehow even worse. Lights are flickering overhead as she's packing up boxes. She'll swear she's put something into one area of the house so that she can pack it, and it just disappears. But she knows she is never spending another night in this apartment. So she's literally packing up the place. She decides to leave around 10 p.m. She packs up an essentials bag. She's going to go stay at a friend's house. She's not sleeping in this apartment, and good for her. However, this entity did not seem very happy about this, because as she gets closer and closer to leaving, she swears it just feels like something is staring at her. And right as she's about to leave, she hears what sounds like footsteps running down the hallway of her apartment building, and her sister's voice saying, come here, come here, come here. And her heart is pounding. My heart is pounding. She has to call a friend, like a 6'5" guy friend, to come and get her. And he does. And of course, nothing is in the hallway and nobody is there. But that is it. She's like, movers can handle this. I'm not going back. She ends up eventually getting moved out. All of the stuff gets put into storage for the time being. And she's kind of trading off her time, spending the nights with her friends in the city and going home to stay with her family on the weekends. And she's just doing this until she can find another place. But she could never go back to that apartment after what happened to her there. And ever since, she hasn't heard her sister's voice. She hasn't really had anything paranormal happen to her. So hopefully whatever this is attached to that apartment and will stay put, because oh my God. She says at every little noise, she still jumps thinking that it's this thing again and she's going to hear her sister's voice. But as of now, it seems like whatever it was is attached to that apartment, and I really, really hope it leaves her alone. That is one of the craziest mimic stories I've ever heard. And so terrifying. Literally, the phone call in the beginning felt like the plot of a horror movie. Stay spooky, friends.
Spooky story time. A follower named Ella sent me this story, and we're going to call it Sister, Mimic, or Ghost. Ella says that this incident happened to her last year, and she lived in an apartment with her sister and her 2 dogs. One day after work, she's laying in bed, cuddling with her 2 dogs, and she's just chilling, scrolling on her phone, and she hears her sister come home from work. She clearly hears her sister unlock the door, open the door, close it, lock it, and puts her keys inside the key bowl. Not only did she hear it, but her dogs heard it as well, because they got up so excited. They ran to the door, started scratching it excitedly because she was home. She tried calming them down, like, hey, everybody relax. She's gonna come see us in a little bit. When she gets all settled in, everybody calm down. Some time passes, and she hears her sister go into her room. She's there chilling. She's actually on the phone. She can hear her talking, and she can even hear her scrolling through TikTok videos. Ella says that it's important that we know that her room and her sister's room are directly next to each other, so you can literally hear everything. A few more minutes passed. Her sister never came to check on them like she normally does, so she was like, something's weird. Let's go check on her. She and her dogs go right next door to her room. They're standing there panting like, hey, open the door. She does, and she says that as soon as she opened that door, she feels like the whole house went quiet. Kind of like that eerie quiet, like this is too damn quiet. She says her sister's room was pitch black, and this sense of dread just went through her body, and she even got chills and everything. Like normal, we always try to rationalize everything. So she's like, maybe she left real quick because she had some shit to do. Let's call her. So now Ella's there minding her own business, calling her sister. Hey, did you come home? Only her sister says she hadn't been home since that morning. No, thank you. Ella swears that she heard clearly her sister's voice on the phone. She heard her phone like going through like the TikTok videos and everything. And she's like, even the dogs heard. Like, they were excited because they thought my sister was home. Like, Ella says that until this day, she doesn't know what exactly happened. And she just doesn't know what it was. Was it a mimic? Was it a ghost? Or was it something else? What do you guys think? I think hell no. But thank you so much, Ella, for sending me this story all the way from Brazil. Loved it. You got me fucked, but it was a really good story. If you guys have any other stories that you'd like for me to read, go ahead and send them via DM or email, and I'd love to read them. And I'll see you guys in the next spooky story. Bye!
So I used to live in a haunted house, and a lot of people don't believe me when I say that, but my mom and dad bought a house back in 1968. It was built in 1966 in New Jersey, and they were like the first owners of the house. So the neighborhood itself was supposedly built on top of a burial ground, or an Indian burial ground, and they said a lot of activity was happening throughout the neighborhood, and a lot of the houses, when they used to talk to their neighbors, they shared a lot of the same stories. So my mom and dad also experienced a lot of things like mimics and poltergeists and things to that extent in this home, but they didn't want to move because it was a brand new home. My mom stopped sleeping in the bedroom with my dad for as long as I remember, and the reason why is because she didn't feel safe in that room. She didn't feel safe on that part of the house. So when I was brought into the picture, I have I have 6 other siblings. I remember one night that I was in my mom and dad's room. I don't know why I was in there. My mom had just got home from work. She was OCD, so she was mopping. My dad was at work, and I was in their room for whatever reason. I was just playing with their stereo system. Behind the stereo system, there was a wall mirror, and I just remember playing at the stereo system, looking up, and my mom was standing behind me. I could see her in the mirror, but my mom wasn't wearing anything. And when I mean she wasn't wearing anything, I mean she was completely not wearing anything. So I turn around thinking this is weird as shit, and I look and my mom's not there. She's not behind me. So I turn back around to look in the mirror, and she's still standing there. So I run as fast as I can out the room, hit my knee on our couch, start crying. My mom's like, don't go in there. That's why I don't go in there. The only person that slept in my room, in that room, was my dad. Nothing bothered him. There was another, night where our power went out for whatever reason. I think it was a bad storm. And my mom was telling us some stories that, trying to keep us busy, occupied. And we heard a crashing sound. It sounded like our ceiling fan in the kitchen had fallen out of the ceiling onto the floor. Glass went everywhere. So my dad comes out of his room that he was in. He's like, oh my God, like I got to clean this up. And my mom's like, yeah, well, watch your feet, don't walk in there with no shoes on. There's glass on the floor. So he goes to bend the corner to go look. He goes back in his room and he doesn't say anything. He closes the door. And my mom's like, are you going to clean up the glass? Are you going to clean it up? And he's like, I'm not finna go in there. So my mom's like, why aren't you going in there? So she gets up, she goes and looks in the kitchen, and there's nothing on the floor. Nothing at all. We used to hear books slamming in the upstairs room. We all slept, like me, my mom, my brothers, all of us slept in the living room because we were so afraid of that house. My mom didn't want to move. My dad didn't want to move. They bought the house. They were trying to sell it. We used to hear books slamming, just like all throughout the night. You would hear, like, it sounded like someone was taking a textbook and just slamming it on the floor as hard as they could. Some nights we would hear in the kitchen, like someone was clanking pots and pans, spoons and forks. And my mom would say, don't look in the kitchen, just ignore it and go to bed, ignore it and go to bed. And she would say something to the extent of, God will protect us and, whatever's, I forgot what the sayings go, but she would say it and it'll eventually stop. But, I don't play about that stuff. I have a lot of stories And this went on for as long as I can remember in that house. I remember when we moved, I felt so at peace. It was still a little bit of a traumatic experience to try to sleep in the new home we moved into, because we moved from Jersey to Georgia. But I'll never forget that. I'll never forget it.
What if a mimic was trying to steal your baby? Well, I got an email of a family that is dealing with this right now, and it is terrifying. Guys, headphones, prayers, everything for this one. Before we get started, I just want to remind you to subscribe to my YT channel. The link is in my bio. My IG is also there too, where I post the same scary stories, different ones, and longer versions. If you want to send me your true scary story, my email is in my bio. Today's submitter's name is Ash, and Ash and her boyfriend in 2024 moved to Oklahoma to move in with a couple of friends. It's also important to note that Ash is pregnant during this time. We'll call these friends' names Nix and Jake. So one day, Ash is upstairs talking to Nix when she thinks that she sees her fiance in the corner. She looks over at her fiance, and her fiance is looking at her like he needs something. So she looks at him and she's like, and he doesn't say anything to her. He just stares at her and then he walks away. So she's like, okay, that's kind of weird. And she continues to talk to Nix. After she's done talking to Nix, a few minutes later, she walks downstairs to go see what her fiance wants. Her fiance's name is Asmudel. So she asks him, hey, what did you need? And he looks at her like she's crazy. He's like, what are you talking about? She's like, I just saw you upstairs. You just stared at me. And he was like, I wasn't upstairs. So this really freaks Ash out, but she doesn't really know what to do with it. So she kind of just brushes it off. A few days later, she's sitting right next to Asmudel, and she looks in the corner and she sees this figure standing in the doorway. Now this figure looks exactly like her fiance, and she's so confused. She's just staring at it as her fiance is sitting right next to her. So she's staring at this thing, it's staring back at her. She said that literally 2 or 3 minutes went by before she broke contact with this thing. She was so confused and in shock that she couldn't even move. And out of nowhere, this thing just vanishes. She doesn't really know what to do with this. She's like, should I say anything? Should I not? I am so confused right now, but she decides not to say anything because she's freaked out and she doesn't want to seem like she's crazy. This is just the beginning of the terror that happens to this family. A couple of months later, at the end of April, beginning of June, they move into their own house. One thing about this house is everybody knows that it's haunted. The reason being is because her fiance, Asmudel, used to live in this house. An example of something that happened to him when he was a kid, one time he was talking to his dad in the kitchen about his ceiling fan in his room. He goes back into his room, he lays in his bed. Something tells him to get up out of his bed immediately. So he jumps up, he gets out of his bed, and the minute he steps foot on the ground, the ceiling fan falls on the bed. So now they're living in this house, and one day in mid-June, her fiance had gotten a job where it kept him away from home for a little bit, and she was still pregnant during this time. So she's sitting on her couch when she hears footsteps, and she knows that he's at work, so she gets a little concerned, but she checks his location anyway. She looks down at her phone to check his location. She looks up, and when she looks up, she sees him standing in the front doorway. Next to him is a kid standing in the doorway of the bathroom. Now, Ash is absolutely terrified at this point. She cannot move. She is literally scared for her life. Ash said before this incident occurred, her baby would move around fine in her stomach. But after this incident occurred, she stopped moving around so much. And when she was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck twice. She almost was unalived. Now, you may think this is the end of it, and so did I, until I got a follow-up email from her, and she was terrified in the email. She said, something is going on in my house. Please, I don't know what to do. I am so scared right now. Apparently, the other night, this was just a couple nights ago, she had gotten up to go to the bathroom. At this point, her daughter is born, and she's in her bassinet in her room. She goes to the bathroom, and she turns just to look at the bassinet in the room to check on her baby real quick, and she sees herself standing above the bassinet. Just herself, okay? Except for the only difference is this person is wide-eyed with red eyes, and she looked like she was trying to cry, but like couldn't cry, like almost like trying to fake cry. That was the look on this woman's face. So obviously at this point, she's like, this thing's trying to take my baby. So she starts walking towards it because she wants it to get away from her baby. And as soon as she does, she runs and grabs her baby. She pulls the baby out of the bassinet. This thing disappears and she's absolutely petrified. Sorry, both of my lights died. A couple days later, this is actually just a few days ago, her husband has this nightmare, and he has a nightmare of the shadow figure that she saw standing by the couch. In this nightmare, he's putting his baby upstairs. By the way, they do not have an upstairs. Afterwards, he comes back down, he sees his wife, they're now married, and he's like, I don't feel good. Something is wrong. I feel like something is wrong right now. I'm gonna go to the kitchen and I'm gonna grab a shiny object. So he comes comes out of the kitchen after grabbing that object and he goes towards his wife. And before he gets to her, he looks to his right and he sees this tall figure, like 8 feet tall. It's just this shadow figure. So he then stops to look at it. He said that it had no face and it was just growling at him. And then it just starts smiling. So while this is all happening in real life, his wife Ash is laying next to him and she sees him freaking out in his sleep. He's screaming in his sleep. So she tries to wake him up. She's like shaking him to wake him up. And then she looks at his eyes and she can see the whites of his eyes. So she just panics. So he finally wakes up and he's just panicked. He tells her about his dream and she's like, that's super weird. Then he falls back asleep and then 30 minutes later, not even 30 minutes later, the baby wakes up crying, asking for her father. So a couple nights ago, this was like 2 days ago, literally, she was trying to fall asleep in her bed and she can't fall asleep when all of a sudden she feels something reach out from underneath the bed, tries to grab her but brushes against her hair. Then all of a sudden this stench came in the room and she said that it smelled like actual like terrible. Now, she wants to know what you guys think because she's absolutely terrified. She wants to know what she can possibly do. Does anyone have any suggestions for her? They don't know what to do and they feel like their life is in danger and they feel like something is trying to take their baby. And I personally think that this sounds like a mimic problem. What do you guys think? Do you think it's a mimic problem? You guys have now seen me in 5 different lightings. Sorry. So my name is Kaisa. I tell true scary stories that you guys submit to me on here every single night. If you have a true scary story, like I said, emails in my bio, kaisaspooky@gmail.com. Love every single one of you so much. I love it when you guys answer other people's questions in my comments. I love it when you guys are just sweet and kind. Honestly, you make my day every single day and I truly, truly mean that. So I hope that you guys have a wonderful night, but I also need you to do me one more thing. And what is that? Have a spooky night. I love you guys. See you in the next one.
So for those of you guys who have been following me for a long time, you have already heard the story, but I'll go ahead and retell it for all the new people. So when my daughter was about 5 years old, I just randomly stopped at my mom's house one day. It was the middle of the day, I had keys to her house, I knew she would be home, and I knew the code to her alarm system. So I walked in with my daughter, I had a bunch of bags with me, I think we had just been out shopping, and I stopped at my mom's house to show her a couple of things that I had actually gotten for my mom. When I walked into the house, I disarmed the alarm, I put all the bags on the table, and I called out for my mom, who I knew was upstairs. I very clearly heard when my mom said, "I'm upstairs." Me having all these bags and being really excited to show my mom what I got her, I told her just come down so I can show her. Once again, I heard my mom clear as day say, "Come upstairs," like I'm up here, just come up here. I decided to just kind of start walking up the stairs. As I'm halfway up the stairs, I don't know what it was, I don't know if it was like my sixth sense or what, but something just stopped me in my tracks. I looked around and something just felt off, and then I looked up at my mom's bedroom door and I noticed that it was shut. The only time she closes her bedroom door is when she's not home. Otherwise, her bedroom door is always open. Before I could even think about what to do next, my phone goes off and it's my mom letting me know that she saw when I disarmed the alarm that she wasn't home, but that she would be home soon. So who the heck was upstairs telling me to go upstairs? I don't think I've ever run out of a house so fast. I ran downstairs, I grabbed my daughter, and I waited for my mom in the backyard. Of course, when we walked in, we checked the house, there was nothing there. Till this day, I still wonder what would have happened had I actually made it all the way upstairs.
If you've heard the Peking wife story and it freaked you out, this one's gonna freak you out probably just as much. So this couple, they live in this quiet, isolated home, and one night they're getting ready for bed. Actually, the husband's already laying in the bed and the wife is in the bathroom, I guess, maybe doing her skincare. I don't know what she was doing. But the door is cracked just a little bit and he just glances over and he can see his wife in the reflection of the mirror, and she's just staring at him, like creepily staring at him. He calls her name and she doesn't say anything. She doesn't move. So he gets up to go in the bathroom and be like, "Hey, why would you ignore me?" And when he walks in there, she's just going about her nightly routine, doing her normal thing. Then a few nights later, they're laying in bed. Both of them are laying in bed. He can feel his wife laying beside him, and he's drifting off to sleep, and then he hears the floorboards creak, and he wakes up because that's weird, and he rolls over and looks, and the bathroom light is on, the door is cracked, and he can see his wife in the mirror again, just staring at him. And so he gets really startled and he yells her name again. Her name is Emily, and he's like, Emily, what are you doing? And still she's just staring. And then he hears from right beside him a the tired voice, like you just woke someone up. And Emily, his wife, who is lying right next to him, says, James, who are you talking to? And the terror just set in for him. So he jumps up out of the bed and runs to the bathroom. The bathroom door is wide open and there's no one in there. And his real wife, Emily, is laying right in the bed, right next to him. So obviously he realizes that the thing in the bathroom, whatever it was definitely not his wife.
I got you. This is the story of my family's experience with what I believe was a mimic, or at least displayed some very mimic-like behavior. This happened in my family home that I would eventually inherit from my father when it was just him and my brother living there. The house had kind of a weird history to it. It was like an artist's home, and she really built it in a very specific way to her tastes. Cut a lot of corners building it to make it really artsy. And she never ended up living there. So when she eventually sold it, my dad bought it and he and my little brother lived in it together. And things were pretty wonky as soon as they moved in. My brother says he went for a walk one time in the forest surrounding this area and found a perfect circle of animal bones with something in the middle, and he got a really bad feeling and just ran the other way back home. But the creepiest thing has to be the fact that for the first little while after they moved in, they would see each other walking in and out of rooms or leaving the house when they weren't there. My brother was sitting on the couch watching TV when he suddenly saw my dad walking out the front door, saw him open the door, close it behind him. He didn't say anything, but my brother didn't think much of it. He was just watching his show. And maybe 2 minutes after he saw my dad walk out the front door, saw the back of his head, saw him leave, his bedroom door opened, right behind the living room, and my dad walked out. And there's no way back into his bedroom from the front yard unless he crawled through a window, which my 6'3" dad wasn't doing. Another example of this I remember my dad telling me was when he was using this weight bench that we had upstairs. He was working out and he heard my brother walk in the front door and heard his voice downstairs say hey dad. My dad yells back hey, or something like that, and continues on with his workout. And a minute later, my brother walks out of his bedroom, which is right next to this area where my dad was working out. They would hear each other's voices when they weren't home. My brother would be away for the weekend or something, and my dad would swear he could hear him talking and laughing upstairs. There was even this really weird incident where, again, on the workbench, one of them was working out on it when suddenly these bookshelves that they had against the walls started shaking like there was an earthquake, but it's Georgia and there wasn't an earthquake. And they get up from working out to see what's going on, and right as they get up, something really heavy fell down from the bookshelf where it would have landed on their head if they had stayed on the bench. It got so bad they had someone out to cleanse the house, and that was always crazy to me because my brother is kind of a skeptic, but my dad really truly was a skeptic. I think more in the sense that he believed in the paranormal, so maybe not a true skeptic. He just had a really big respect for it. It was you don't acknowledge it, it doesn't acknowledge you. We don't talk about that kind of stuff. His only daughter grew up to tell people ghost stories on the internet. Who would have guessed? But it got so bad, I know they had someone out to cleanse the house. And again, this was 10 years ago now. So I don't know exactly what went down or what the energy was in the house after that. As far as it was told to me, they had someone out to cleanse the house, and pretty much in the next couple of days, things stopped completely and it never happened again. Both of them told me stories about this though, and both of them were really shaken up from it. Again, much more startling coming from my father, who didn't talk about the paranormal at all. If you guys want and my brother is down, maybe sometime I can get him on to talk a little bit about his experiences in that house. But again, we inherited the house after my dad passed away, and in my experience there, I've had a couple of paranormal things happen, most of which I've talked about on my YouTube channel, but nothing quite like this. Nothing like a mimic. Like that, seeing the back of each other's heads, like hearing each other talk. I never really knew what it was called when they originally told me about it. But now that I look back, I'm like, oh, that was a mimic. You guys had a mimic in and around the house. The whole story is really fascinating. I think about it all the time till this day. It's one of the scariest stories I've ever heard, and I believe it completely because I know my dad and my brother, and neither one of them would just manufacture a ghost story for fun, especially because like I was the only person they were telling. I actually have like 2 other stories that I did experience that could be mimics, but I'm not really sure. If you guys want to hear those, I can keep the story times going, but hopefully you enjoyed this. You hear something calling your name when you're home alone, you see the back of someone's head when you're home alone, you didn't. You didn't. You ignore it. You lock yourself in a room. Don't acknowledge it. Stay safe and spooky, friends.
Okay, as promised, I'm back with more ghost stories, and I'm gonna tell what I think is like one of the most terrifying things that has happened to us to date in this apartment. Okay, so if you're just joining us, a little backstory. I live in a 200-year-old New Orleans apartment. It's in the French Quarter. It is like a very traditional, cool New Orleans house. It's beautiful, it's moody. If you wanna see what it looks like, there's lots of videos. But, you know, as expected, there have been quite a few unexplained things that happened in here. So a little bit of backstory. We have a ghost that's like pretty judgmental, so anytime we change anything, she seems to make some noise. We had painted the walls blue, which we just painted the ceilings today, so we'll see how that goes. And there was an incident in the middle of the night that really scared the 2 of us, my boyfriend and I, and it was, we woke up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m., and all of the windows in the living room were open. So this was very strange. We didn't leave them open. It was unsettling. It was the first big, like, really unsettling thing that happened. And after this, we had the house cleansed. So that was all good, right? And for a couple of weeks, everything was quiet. I had a friend who came to stay, and she ended up sleeping in the back bedroom, which, if you know anything about the back bedroom, if you've seen the videos of it, I will even insert one right here. It's got a super heavy, dark, very creepy vibe to it. I cannot explain it. I do not like to go back there by myself. It just has a weird feeling, and I think a lot of people, even in the comments, had said that they could feel it through the video. It's just really strange back there. I'm sorry for all of the fidgeting, by the way. I have crippling ADHD. So she comes, she stays in the back. Everything's fine, right? We didn't tell her that there was like spooky stuff going on here because I didn't want to freak her out. She's kind of a very practical person too. And you know, on the last day that she was here, we were talking and she was like, hey, that room has a weird feeling. Like, I don't know what it is. She's like, it's really comfortable, but it just has like a very odd feeling. And I said, I know. And I said, did you see anything? And she said, no, I didn't see anything, but like it just has like a weird heavy feeling to it. Oh, she also said she felt like somebody was watching her. And she said, like, couldn't really explain the feeling, but she just felt like somebody was always watching her. And that's a feeling that in the back of the house, oof, I get that all the time. And so does my boyfriend. So this was kind of a little bit of validation, right? So the night after my friend leaves, we go to bed, everything's normal. My boyfriend, my dog, and I were sleeping. And in the middle of the night, once again, so my boyfriend wakes up, and I had not woken up yet, right? I had not like woken up yet. I was still sleeping on this side, and I was awoken by some like shuffling on his side of the bed and just like a little bit of frantic behavior. So this is weird. I turn around, he looks at me and he jumps back and he goes, I just woke up and you were coming from the middle, like where the closet is, and I'm actually going to insert a video there right now because it's a really creepy closet and we always keep the doors closed. Okay, here's the side of the bed, and then these are the French doors that go to the Jack and Jill closet. And please excuse the mess in there. This walks through, and then there's more French doors in the back, and that connects to that back bedroom. So always at night, we keep these doors closed. So he said that he saw me coming from the French doors, which were closed, and coming from the French doors, and I was standing right in front of him while he was scrambling to put his glasses on, and it startled him, right? And then he turns around, and I'm just waking up because of the commotion that's being made. So we get out of bed, we go into the kitchen, we turn the lights on. We're a little bit startled. The dog's with us. She's acting a little bit weird too, but it wasn't she wasn't barking or anything like that. And then we decide to go back into the bedroom to go back to bed. And the French doors to that center, Jack and Jill closet, were open. These were not open before. I am 100% positive they were not open. It scared the shit out of us. And he said, as clear as day, I was walking and I stood right in front of the bed and I was staring at him. So, I don't know. That's another mimic situation, right? It's really, really odd. You can chalk it up to, maybe he was tired and he saw me standing in front of the bed when he put his glasses on. But why were the French doors open? So, let me know what you think. I've got more coming for you. I just thought that one was really, really creepy.
I'm friends with a mimic. Now, before y'all come for me, I'm gonna let you know, if you listen at all to my spooky experiences playlist, this is a long history in my family. This thing has been in our grandmother's house for as long as I remember. I grew up with it. It was kind of comforting, to be honest. If I missed a family member, it would often pretend to be them and kind of just give comforting little nods, wave, and it would play tricks on me and my friends, but they were never super mean-spirited. It was always just stupid little tricks. But my grandmother would experience it in ways where if she was missing people, she would see them and fully believe it was them just sitting there with her. Or there was a time she saw me get into bed next to her like I did as a child, and she was super excited about that. Now, my grandmother passed away years ago and moved out of that house even before that. The mimic didn't love the change. It doesn't love change in general, so I'm starting to realize that might be a trigger for a lot of them. We inherited some of my grandma's doll collections. You know I love dolls. I collect haunted dolls. One of the dolls came home, and suddenly we started experiencing kind of the negative effects of the mimic. It could be temperamental, suddenly seeing an angry cat around the house and more people hearing my voice around. So I suggested, let's move the dolls outside, and then when I move away from my family, I would take them, because honestly, the mimic has been mean to me before, but I know that it was because it didn't like the change of me leaving that house when I was younger. Now I know more so how to connect with it. So I would say